About wearing masks. Talking all the time. Caroline? Well, good morning everybody. It's 8:30 and welcome to the Puna Kōrero meeting of the 18th of August 2022. I'll formally open the meeting. I see Moses there as well. Good. I'll formally open the meeting with apologies, and we have an apology from Taku. I'll move that be accepted. Thank you, Whawhoi. All those in favour? Seconded. Yes, very good. And we have Mike and Moz beaming in. Welcome, guys. So let's move to public forum, of which we have none, but I just note that we have 2 observers at the meeting for everybody. Welcome. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? There being none, we'll move on to notification of extraordinary business, and there are no items of extraordinary business to declare. So that moves us to item 5, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the Te Puna Kōrero meeting of the 4th of August 2022. I'm going to move those as a true and correct record. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Mayor Baker. Well, Mayor Baker. Does anyone have any items, corrections for the minutes of the 4th of August? There being none, I'll move that they be accepted as a true and correct record. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. So that doesn't remove anything. It actually moves us to item 6, which is the decision report for Calliope Park, renaming to Pōrirua Park. I'm going to move this report to get it on the table. Do I have a second, please? Jeff, thank you very much. This time. Okay, so it's on the table. You'll understand that we're being asked here to approve the renaming of Calliope Park to Pōrirua Park, and also agree that it actually be gazetted, the name be gazetted under the Reserves Act 1977. So Dylan, do you want to come up and, if you want to just very briefly take us through this, and then I'll open it up for comments, questions, etc.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Tēnā koutou e te kaunihera, ngā mihi e tangata whenua I tēnei rohu. This paper really comes out of a desire from Ngāti Toa to change Calliope, as that name is quite offensive to Ngāti Toa. So there's kind of 2 aspects to this report. The first one is changing the name from Calliope Park to Pōrirua Park, and the second part is making a decision to gazette it, as currently the park has no formal name under the Reserves Act.
Very good. I'll open it for comments. Does any councillor want to make any comments, ask any questions of officers? We have been through this previously. Yes. Izzy.
Thank you, Chair. I 100% support the changing of the name and acknowledge Ngāti Toa's place in this whole process. I did have some questions around the consultation, and we did go out for consultation. I note that we only went out with the one name as an option. We also had a lot of names that came back in the from our community to say, whenever we go out to consult, I always feel like we have the same sort of feedback that comes back. There's not sufficient reach. We can't really change that. We're doing our best to get out to as many people as we possibly can. And then the other thing that comes back from feedback that comes from our community is the options aren't there. So in this case, we went out to our people and asked, do you want Pōrirua? They came back and said, we clearly heard there were some options that were presented to this committee. I wondered if there was any opportunity for us to explore those names. So we had Aporo Joyce was one of the options, and I know that there are rules around reserves parks and the naming of them. However, there is also the example that exists currently with the renaming of Richard Tautolo Park, which is someone who was a pastor in the community. Aporo Joyce was a name that sort of sprung out in that during the consultation period, who is someone who's also impacted on our juniors in our community. So I wonder if you could answer that.
Yeah, so we were gifted the name Matahorua by Ngāti Toa, and that name fits with all of the requirements that we have. Given that the park has the same name as the street, and that new name was gifted to us by Ngāti Toa, we thought that was the most appropriate name.
All right, Izzy?
So further to that, yeah, I do accept that. However, I'm trying to say on behalf of our community, I guess, is when we went out, we didn't really give them options. Yes, Ngāti Toa's gifted us the name for the street. When it comes to the other things that are attached to it, is there an opportunity to go out to our community and say, hey, look, here are some options. Which one would you prefer? And I know, like, when you first came to it, the thing is, when you first came to us, the first we heard that you were going to go out to it was when we actually got the consult come back to us. And the whole process, I think, was 2 weeks that you went out to consult, which is also another short time frame.
Maybe Wendy can just clarify some of these things that you're talking about.
When we go out to consult, we are required to have a proposal. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't, prior to formal consultation, canvass what options might be. Like you, when I read the names, I thought, oh, you know, all of these are valid options for something in our community. So we could certainly take those names and keep them in a drawer somewhere for the next naming opportunity in that community, because I do understand that these are community driven and they have meaning for that community. So certainly, we do name various things in various parts of the landscape at different times. So we could certainly do that in future. And this was a little bit of an unusual moment in terms of the nature of that, and we wouldn't see that naming would normally take that path. And of course, we've got the naming policy coming up, which is harder to write than you might think, but so we're trying to balance some of these community interests, mana whenua interests, etc., in that policy.
Thank you for that, Wendy. Mayor Baker.
Thank you. I support the name, and I do understand our naming policy is coming up and we will get a chance. I just note in option 2A, number 40, it states that there may be some other offensive names. And I understood we did Calliope because all the houses were being taken down, 90%. Do we have any idea how many other names that the iwi think are offensive? Or, because I know we just can't change names because we have houses and everything else, but I just wondered, have we had an indication?
I have had a very preliminary discussion with Ngāti Toa about that. They have indicated a number, but they haven't indicated what the number is. I have explained that changing a street name is actually very difficult. It's very difficult for residents if it's a big street particularly, which is why we were much more open to Calliope than we were for others. Because everybody in that street has to go and change all of their details, and addresses are often identifiers for businesses and suppliers that they might have. So it's I have had that discussion with Ngāti Toa that we don't do these things lightly. I did give them the option of keeping Calliope back for so that they could put them all forward and the council could consider them as a whole. They didn't want to do that. So Calliope was definitely their top priority in terms of renaming.
Thank you. Well, it was pretty easy when you're knocking 90% of the houses down. So just with the street naming policy, does that actually, when it comes back to us, does that go for consultation as well, where people can put names forward or not? Just I want to be 100% sure. I wasn't sure it did.
Do you know?
Through the chair, the street naming policy would be open for consultation.
Okay,
when
thank
it comes
you.
Back.
And just for clarity, that does not include naming of reserves or anything else, does it? That policy.
Simply roads. So
Simply
reserves
roads.
goes through the process that's in front of you today.
Okay. Yep.
And we're not redoing the reserve, that process. I think it's 2 or 3 years away, Matt. That's about right. That's
Yep.
where parks have got it planned at the moment.
Understand. That's good. Kylie.
Whilst I do share some sentiment with submitters, and in particular Mrs. French, in regards to the option of naming the park after community champions, whether past or present, the proposal to rename from Calliope to Matahorua, in my opinion, wasn't to upset the community. In fact, it's a really special relationship that we do have with mana whenua, and I would like to think that the community would actually embrace that. Yes, we have many people from all cultures who live in Cannons Creek, and many who have been living there for years. I absolutely acknowledge that. But as I said, we can embrace that relationship that we have and actually accept the name that's been gifted to us. So I believe that we consulted with the right people, being mana whenua from the outset, and for that reason I will be supporting the name change.
Thank you, Kylie. Ewan.
Yes, the Mayor actually asked my question for me, but I won't be here when that discussion is. But I would hope that that very serious consideration be given before any major changes be made on the basis of a request by the iwi. I remember years ago when I lived in Endeavour Drive, it was called Adventure Drive North, and we had Adventure Drive South. And we had, there was a lot of discussion at the time, and eventually the roads weren't going to join, so they decided to change. But it's a huge imposition on the people who live in the street, on everything. And I think because there's lots of names out there that might be offensive to me as well, and I'm not about going to want to change them, but I think very serious consideration has to be given because before any changes are made, and I would hope that councillors would err on the eye of caution when they come to make any suggestions of any changes to any street names. As I say, when you start changing names because they're offensive, different things are offensive to different people. So, I just, word of caution there, I won't be here, but I'll be watching very closely, and you might see me in the public bench. So.
Thank you, Ewan. Does anyone else want... Mike, sorry, I didn't... Do you want to say something?
No, thanks. The Mayor asked my question for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jeff.
Koro, kia ora matua upoko min he kai kanakira katoa min he tangata whenua te rohe. Thank you to staff in Ngāti Toa for preparation of this documentation. I was actually door knocking up in Matahorua and around there on Saturday, so it was a great opportunity for me to talk to my friends about the issues that were coming up at today's meeting. I'm in support of the motion, but I do want to acknowledge the submissions that have come in and provide a bit of a retort. One submission said, quite simply, 3 words, I'm not Māori. Fair enough. We are a kaleidoscope city, but our relationship starts with te tiriti. There are a number of places where the language stigmatises our mana whenua. If we as a council are truly genuine about that relationship with Ngāti Toa, then we have an obligation to go back and remove that stigma. Just because you haven't lived with that trauma does not mean that it is not there. In fact, it probably says something about how well we have ignored it that highlights the hidden power of that trauma. Now, there's already been said, what about other Māori or other Pacifica communities? That's true. And with regard to our Pacifica communities, I expect that council officers will take that on board with regards to a new street naming policy that will eventually come to the table. But let's also acknowledge that it would be inappropriate for me to travel to Apia, to Nukula Alafoa or Avarua and advise against the wishes of the elders of the Indigenous peoples to a name of a space. I respect their mana. It's an important part of who I am as a Māori person. But my Māoritanga doesn't supersede my whakauetanga or my arawatanga. Porirua has a large diaspora of people like me, yet I acknowledge the manaakitanga of Ngāti Toa. And so I acknowledge the reverence that they have to give in their view on this in this rohe, because if the roles were reversed, I would feel uncomfortable if someone from Ngāti Toa came up to my whanaunga up north and told them how to do things. Aparo Joyce. I only met Aparo Joyce once. It was a very positive experience. But my insight about him is through the stories of others and his enormous contribution to the community. I'm told amongst many things that he was an avid gardener and loved sunflowers. There's already been talk about how to incorporate champions like Aparo Joyce into our city. I also provide another suggestion. I humbly ask council officers to consider in future to demarcate a section at the rear of the park for a garden in his honour, to serve as a living reminder of his service to community. I'll even bring the sunflower seeds. I didn't bring them today because it was too wet, but I'll bring them. Finally, because I think some of my colleagues around this table might struggle with this point, trauma is the emotional response to a distressing event. And the pain can linger if there are still the triggers in place. Those triggers are stigma. Would we really be worrying about the cost of this or the histrionics of it if a park or a street was named after Jimmy Savile? In the United Kingdom, scores of streets and monuments were removed and renamed. So we can get this one right. And let's move on to removing other stigmas in the city. That is manaaki. Kia ora.
Thanks, Jeff. Does anyone else want to make any comments? I mean, I think we've canvassed the subject pretty well, and on balance, we probably, and I'll put it to the vote in a second, the recommendations seem very fair and just. That noted, I believe there'll be a very healthy discussion in whatever council is sitting at the time when the street naming policy comes up again, and we have to be very careful about the principles that are in there. But again, we thank those that made submissions and, for the possible names going forward. So thank you again, everyone, for your input. I'm now going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the project report. Item 6.2. So this comes regularly to Te Puna Kōrero, and we have a summary on the first page. I'm going to put the motion that we receive the report. Do I have a seconder, please? Izzy, thank you very much. So the item is now on the table. People can talk about it. I just want to ask people if they have any questions about these projects that are listed here. I'll be surprised if there are none. Mike.
Yeah, thanks. Look, there were a couple of things there that triggered for me. Page 45, transmission gully link roads, major issue risks. Can we explain what they still are? And the second one was the wastewater trunk main upgrade, the increase in forecast costs. I wonder how big that increase is, what we're looking at.
Andrew. Yeah.
So the first one, link roads, the ongoing risks there are, we've just received an abatement notice from Greater Wellington Regional Council, and we have till the 31st of October to reply to that, and that is about, has the builder of the road put in place the correct plantings and planting plans, and that would go into stormwater treatments. And so that's sitting in the Transport Department to reply to the Regional Council on. So there's consenting matters that go on for quite some time. In terms of most people would look at the link roads and think, and transmission gully and think the project's been completed, but the builder of the roads and the related consenting matters will go on for quite some time, the tidy up type stuff. So we're caught by some of that as a principle. Does that make sense? We still have issues over COVID claims and associated claims where we've fought those claims. So we'll only pay out money if we have to. So those processes linger on. And I guess the other thing with the link roads that you're aware of is the Silverwood claim, where there is a land valuation tribunal hearing, I think about the 10th of October, it's to the High Court now, to the High Court on the 10th of October. So hopefully we get a decision before the end of the year, and that's the land underneath. I'm sorry, Councillor, your second question was which wastewater project?
That's right. Yep, the cost blowout, just the extent of the blowout, I was wondering.
Is this for the Parramatta wastewater pipe?
Yes,
Off the top of my head, about $1 million. It could go as far as 1.5 million. And my general take on that was they actually did very, very good work getting it repaired through a period of COVID. The cost blowout came at near the end of the project, where the earth they were dealing with was a lot harder than they thought it was going to be there by the harbour. They broke their drill head. They had to get parts from overseas, and quite a bit of the cost blowout, apart from the equipment side of it, was to do with it being State Highway 59 and the expense of doing the traffic management correctly. So actually, you know, in the scheme of things, we were very comfortable that the work got done, and in the size of that Wellington Water capital program, it was a major project, but the cost blowout wasn't too bad.
Okay, Mike. Any other questions? Halfway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, my internet's gone, but I did have a question. I think it was regarding, I think it might have been LTP, but there was a consultation that was starting on the 23rd of July. I just want to know what the progress is. I forget, because I can't open it up now.
LTP. Yeah, those are the ongoing projects.
Yeah. So I just want to.
LTP.
Hold on, let me see what this will open up now. My internet's just died for some reason.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the LTP, but there was a.
It's not the LTP. It's just the LTP projects.
Yeah, there was a. Go somewhere else while I find it. With Josh, sorry.
In the meantime, has anyone else got a question? There was Kylie.
Thank you. Just page 65 under the manage weed plant species. Protecting the environment through pest control. It says work carried out within this project, but our pest control plan, what's in place there? Because it's not listed in
This particular project, if you recall, was Donald Love and his partner or wife Heather. Is that right? They came to the LTP. They asked for additional funding for weed control, pest control, and you deliberated and added to the budget an extra $143,000, I think, for 3 years. And so this report lets you know that Parks has spent that money. They've started with Donald and Heather by visiting them, and they had photographs in their submission about where they thought the work was required. So they've targeted those areas. The money has been spent jointly between Parks and Transport, and they have a plan about where to go to next. They've purchased appropriate chemicals, so it's an ongoing program. Within the wider scheme of things, you obviously have a Parks department that does a certain amount of work on pests, but we have a bit of argy-bargy with the regional council as residents come in and say, well, what about this geese, or what about this or that, and should it be the regional council that do it, should it be the Department of Conservation, or should it be Porirua City Council? So is that helpful in terms of response?
Yeah, and I stand to be corrected by Josh, but talking to Donald the other night at the Pawatahanui Residents Association meeting, he did not raise any red flags when we were talking about it. In fact, he seemed quite relaxed and positive about the things that were happening. So
I think through the chair, just following up on that, perhaps where we disagreed with Donald and Heather was they wanted us to go a bit further than public land and get into private land, and we really think that's a matter perhaps for the regional council or somewhere else. So quite often the pests or the weeds are coming over the fence into the some of the areas, and we'll concentrate on our own spaces to begin with.
Does anyone else have any questions? Ewan, and then Izzy.
I think just regarding the regeneration, I mean, there is no really red stickers on that, and I would have thought that there is a number of risks there that, I am concerned about the progress, and I know we're waiting for finance and all the rest of it, but I would have thought that that would sort of generated some sort of risk on that project. I know there's an arrow which is going downwards in a way, but it doesn't really show up on the main thing for the attachments that there's any risk there. It's all green.
Andrew, do you want to respond to that, or?
When you say the regeneration, Eastern Porirua Regeneration Project, there's quite a bit of information or activities packed into that. Some of it sits more on the social side of things, and some of it's the infrastructure upgrade stuff. My side of it is the infrastructure upgrades stuff. So the council's aware that for more houses to be built, you have to put the infrastructure in place, and this council's been quite active in assisting Ko Te Aranga with getting into Bothamley Park. You've seen that come across. They're at a stage now where they're costing that. That's not a nice conversation for them because construction costs have skyrocketed, but I understand Ko intends to go forward with the work, so they may have to go back to government to get some extra money, but that work's progressing. They're costing a high-level reservoir at the moment. I expect to hear about that in October. And they're out there talking to the community, or trying to talk to the community, about a wetland on Cannons Creek Park, probably, and worried that they didn't get too much feedback. I haven't said anything to them, but I reflected on Elsdon and how we went about Elsdon. We had submissions here from the likes of the hockey club, but we didn't get a great deal of submissions at the time, and you build the thing, it's a big muddy hole, but now you get to the end of it and it looks pretty good. So they are thinking about trying to do some more consultation, particularly about the community features around it. So the infrastructure stuff is ticking along. The government funding, I think they're at Cabinet on the 31st of August. That will go back into KO in September, and early October they'll come out and confirm that they have funding for further stages of the work, and the KO officers or officials are pretty buoyant about that. They think they'll lock in further funding, because certainly one of the pain factors at the beginning is the certainty of funding for the regeneration. The work proper in terms of housing, if you drive around there, Esk, Niger, you can see that they've levelled the land, and they'll be starting building shortly. For a council like ourselves, the issue is all about what intensification looks like in terms of quality public spaces, the roading, all that side of things. I'm also involved in a case for the roading business case to unlock a lot of money in terms of roading public transport in Porirua East. That business case is being progressed, and we've decided to contribute $30,000 to it, roughly about a $250,000 piece of work, but our $30,000 gets us well and truly in there in terms of influencing what the end results look like.
Thank you, Andrew. Got any more comments, Ewan? I guess the issue for council will be going forward is whether they come back and put pressure on us to make even more contributions than we're making now, which will obviously impact rates given escalation in costs. So I think we've got Kylie and then Jeff. Oh, sorry, Izzy. Sorry.
Oh, no, we look
Izzy.
the same.
Yeah, you knew what I was saying. Yeah.
I shared the exact same surprise as Ewan when I was looking at the Eastern Porirua regeneration. So thank you, Andrew, for the update. So just a small question around Le Fale and progress around that. Le Fale and the progress around that.
Do I see Ruben there? Ruben, I'm not an expert on that.
With Le Fale, we're still a few weeks away, I think, from getting it up and running off the ground. There was some leaks in the building that needed to be fixed that should have been fixed now, and all of their furniture's in the office. And I had a meeting with Danny Mariko about a week or so ago, and they're looking forward to getting started very soon. They gave us a date of later next month, but I haven't confirmed whether they will definitely be starting on that time, so I don't want to give a date just yet.
All good, it'll be this year.
Jeff.
Kia ora, mātua upoko. The Fale question has been asked, so thank you, Councillor Ford. The next question I have is regards to Wenera to Onipoto shared pathway. Can the public get some clarity about when the resource consent is due to be lodged? Because there's still some ongoing issues with Ngāti Toa that have been raised in the report. And I think the public should have some understanding of how long this time frame is so we can get to the next stage.
Through the chair, we'll come to you for your council meeting on the 25th of October with a report on the shared pathway and coastal resilience. The update in front of you today, if you look at the financials, you can see the approved budget of 11.8 million. We think it's crept up to 16 million, might be even more now, 16.8. So the first thing you're going to have to deliberate on is things have got more expensive to do, and while we haven't got to a stage of getting a consent or even applying for a consent and getting out there into the market, what we're being told is if you want to build this thing, you're looking at well over 16 million, although there's some wording there about we've got a good contingency in there of 30%. That's the first item. The second item is when the material for the consent application came in, the cultural impact assessment highlighted that there were parts of the road, small pieces of Tatahi Bay Road and surrounding streets that the council and the Crown have never purchased and don't legally own. So the argument was put, council, how can you be working on that road and doing something for a piece of it that you don't own? And that work was done by a gentleman called Robert McLean as part of the cultural impact assessment, but he also attached a report. He'd been doing more work on that. So we've had a look at that with Simpson Grierson, and while we haven't done a huge amount of detail, the overview is yes, that argument has substance, and we need to legalise the road. So to do that, you have to go to the Maori Land Court, and you have to work with, get some agents for the contemporary landowner, and that process may take some time. But it seems like the right thing to do. So we're sitting there right before applying for a consent, having done all our work, thinking we've got a pretty good chance of getting a non-notified consent, and now this issue has come to our attention. And we don't want to go for a consent and get a notified consent and have to argue this out. So the paper on the 25th will say to you, would you be willing to do a two-staged approach? Would you be willing to start with the coastal resilience work, apply for that consent, because that land isn't impacted, while you progress to the Maori Land Court to get the ownership of that section of the road and road reserve sorted out. And there was a hui on the 14th, I understand, of some of the descendants who received that idea favourably rather than us, and Ngāti Toa's received that idea favourably. But again, if you split a consent, there'll be slightly more cost involved. So, but it seems like a way forward. The amount of roading in question is tiny. It's a really small piece of road. But now that we've found 4 minor pieces, and these areas sort of go back to 1916 or something like that, and you've seen maps before about how the coast has changed and things like that. From the looks of it, it's the correct thing to do to legalise the road. So I'm sorry about that, but you'll get full details. And depending on what you decide on the 25th, all the material for the shared pathway and the coastal resilience work for the application, all the reports and things that would go in are all sitting there, and I think they could all be made publicly available.
Thank you. That answers my next question on that. Can I shift now to the Know Your Pipes project? I'm unclear as to the degree of proactiveness with Wellington Water with regards to resolving some of the issues on the properties that have been identified as having ingress issues. And furthermore, there was a report that was sent for the fourth quarter, must be the last fourth quarter, to councillors as part of the regular update that Wellington Water sends out to councillors, saying that they were looking to expand the number of staff tasked to doing this project. And yet in this report it talks about that one of the issues that they have with regards to an underspend is due to vacancies. Can I get a single source of truth as to how many people are there and how many people are on the shovel doing the May?
Single source of truth through the chair. They want 7 people working on it. They've got 4 at the moment. The 4, they did have 6. They've just had 2 resignations in August. One is an internal appointment, so someone inside who's gone somewhere else, and one's another resignation. They're trying to they're trying to recruit, so it's an ongoing churn of staff. And they've found with contractors, they perhaps don't have the experience. Of the 4 staff they have, 3 of them have only been there 6 to 8 months. So one of the problems they're getting into is having experienced staff in this area, and it slows down things for decision making.
Sorry, as to the first part, which is actually, can you expand on what it is? Because I think some of these details have come in a previous project update report around properties where they dispute their position with the council regarding the provisioning of pipes to their properties and so forth.
Yeah.
Can we get some expansion on that?
Yes, so a range of situations going on. I think in the last year I asked the question, how many faults have been found on private properties? I got the answer 54. How are we going? 18 have fixed them, just got off there without getting a letter, or getting the first sort of letter. We've got another 36 where we're in stages of letters, of the letters escalate about wanting those sorts of bits and pieces fixed. And of course, we've talked previously, we find quite a bit of information on our own public network that needs fixed, which goes into the Wellington Water whole body, so other people can take care of that rather than these people in terms of getting it fixed up. So there's an ongoing work program there with people. I've asked the question, what's the cost for the private property owner, and they're telling me they don't know. It's a private matter. I want some more information on that, because we talked earlier on, is this hundreds of dollars to fix or thousands of dollars? I think it's more those 18 who have fixed in the last year. I think that's hundreds of dollars rather than thousands, but I want that confirmed. So I haven't got, like, in terms of the detail you've got in the report and the bits and pieces I'm getting there, the other thing I'm focused on is what are you doing next and where are you going, mindful that they're understaffed. They've got to get back into Te Tahi Bay. We're not as happy with the work that we've done there. There's still some feeling about the sewage getting out. What is happening there? Is it leaking out of public pipes into our public stormwater network rather than the private pipes? That needs to be further investigated. So, and I have figures, specifically for areas like Simple Street is an interesting one where they're now they're sending out 30 letters there. 7 of the properties are fixed. So that tells you there's 23 that are going to be in that process of getting further letters. Does that help?
It does. I have one. You've alluded to it, so I need to ask one more up on this, and that is around the public network components where there have been identified faults, particularly in the main trunk. I think down at the South Beach access road was what I was led to believe. Can councillors receive a report from Wellington Water as to how they assess the severity of that work or the priority that work sits in its overall range of tasks that it has to do? I'm sure you will be not surprised that my community would want that to be a pretty high priority.
Yeah, I'd expect the same. Certainly, yeah, answers we can pick up on that.
I just make the observation, Jeff, that this is not the only place in Porirua that has issues like this. If you ask the residents that live down the Esplanade, that live in Penryn Drive in the north, you will find that the wastewater flows a lot more freely than it does in the bay and with a lot more volume into our harbours. Yeah, and other places. I'm just putting it in context here. I appreciate where you're coming from, but let's spread it across other parts of the city as well, and we need to get onto those. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Josh.
Yeah, but...
Well,
thanks very much, Ross. I had a couple questions. First, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're green across the board on the Plymouth and Flood Response Project, which I'm really happy to see, and just to reiterate that I've been consistently really impressed with the way that our officers in Wellington Water have gone about this, and when I talk to people in the community, they seem happy with progress as well, and I just think that's worth reflecting on because it's good to see how much we're prioritising that. My first question was just in relation to the district plan and just having a look at the risks that were identified, and particularly around the contractor and consultant budgets, the risk around overspend. There was the note that a range of measures have been put in place to actively mitigate the severity of those risks, and I was wondering if we could just hear about what those measures are.
Who's going to answer that?
Through you, Chair, I'll answer that. Thank you, Josh. So the costs are related to the commissioners going through the hearings, and as you know, we've had a multitude of policy changes from central government that have added a lot more time and complexity to that. So we've got not a lot of control around the commissioners because it depends on what submissions come in and how they're dealt with and what evidence is required or further information. So we've always disclosed that there's only limited control we have when it comes to the commissioner costs. When it comes to the evidential information specialists, we are using our internal team as much as we can. So our current staffing resources, we are not geared up at all with actual consultants to feed the hearing process very much. We've got that as lean as we can get it, and we're constantly trying to negotiate where we do have to, the prices and things. So that's about as much as we can do, Councillor Trillin. So.
Cool, thanks very much. No, that's really good to hear. And the other one, sorry, I'm just flicking through pages, was in relation to the pipes, the wastewater trunk main upgrade, from Parimata to Porirua. And just noticing that the risk profile has increased on that, specifically in relation to the financials, and apparently several large variations to the contract.
I think that's already been answered. Josh?
Yeah.
Yep, we've covered that.
Sorry, I must have missed that one. Cool. No worries. All good.
I was bothering you, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Are there any other questions for officers? Farfoy?
I found it.
You found it. Good.
It's page 50. It talks about consultation and engagement with the Eastern Porirua, and it talked about a proposal starting on the 23rd of July. So I just kind of curious to what's the progress in that consultation, even though down the bottom of that it says
It's not us.
over consultation.
So this is the wetlands through the chair, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as I was saying before, is it Porirua Development have been out and about. They've had 2 goes. The first public open day, they got 2 people. The second one, they got 4. So they're really concerned about failing to engage with the public. And they're smart enough to talk to our people about how you get into the churches and everything else. So there was a general sort of conversation at the Te Aranga board yesterday about, you've got to do a bit more in terms of consultation. And as I was saying before about, the Elsden wetland, I didn't say in the board meeting yesterday, but I reflected on it, that a wetland, it's a stormwater retention hole that we're going to dig, and it's not until you get to the end that you see what's over in Elsden, you go, that's pretty special. So they're trying to engage with people, not really about the digging of the hole, but it's what's around it in terms of a walkway and facilities and things like that. And they've got good planners, and they're talking to our parks people. So I don't think they have to thrash it, but they're going to keep going on it to try and involve people a wee bit more. So I think there'll be more effort coming.
Just one other thing. Just talking about consultation. I was at my mother's house, who's a homeowner and a ratepayer, and she showed me the letter that came from us, and my mother doesn't. She reads English, but her first language is Samoan, and so she kind of showed me, what's this? She thought it might have been a bill, but actually it was asking for submissions for the district plan. The one that's going out now. So I was just kind of thinking there must be a better way. I know we've kind of like talked about this over and over through the years, but just wondering, there must be a better way to engage. And you mentioned about churches, but somehow we need to maybe get some champions, get some Pacific champions out there that can encourage that.
We hear your message, Councillor, but I'd just like to reassure you, when I get any letters about the district plan, I also find them very, very difficult to know what's going on. I think there's a whole lot of us in that basket.
Yep.
If I might,
you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just go back to your point that you jumped in on Councillor Hayward, and I'm supporting him, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I do, in terms of, no, I do know your pipes. We instigated that project to try and fix a problem. If that identifies that we have a problem as a city, then it's a bit, we're obligated, in my view, that we've got to look into fixing it, because we're asking the residents to fix their problem, and yet we might not be able to find the money, in talking your comment, to fix the problems that it's highlighted.
Yeah, fair point, Ewan. I was not suggesting that at all, that we shouldn't do it. I was just putting things in perspective, that's all. We have a commitment to that project, and we need to follow it through, absolutely. So I'll allow one more, Jeff. Is it a different...
It is a new item, and I apologise for not bringing it up earlier, Mr Chair. And it is in regards to the district plan. There was a story in the Dawn Post today about the regional planning policy from Greater Wellington Regional Council, the regional policy statement, that would look at far stronger regulations around car-based greenfield developments, and that there may be implications for district planning and local councils across the region. I'm trying to understand, is this can council officers perhaps comment on the risk around that in terms of the timeliness of that proposed potential change, and whether that has an additional fiscal impact to us as well? Kia ora.
Good question, Jeff. Nick.
Yes, through you, Chair, I can respond to that. So you're right, Councillor, there is a direction of travel around carbon reduction and not locking people into a car-based way of living looking forward, and that will have repercussions around land use design, urban design. that is very much in its infancy. We have met with Greater Wellington on their policy direction on that with regards to the Northern Growth Area, and it's fair to say that the Wellington region as a collective is starting to grapple with what that means for greenfield design. Luckily, we haven't, we've got master plans forming that have got that in their minds, and we've got our climate specialists looking at what those policy changes might lead towards. So, yep, it's starting. It will have repercussions. It will affect urban design, but it is the right thing to be doing.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, the answer to that would be that Greater Wellington would have to put a huge more investment with more train stations and buses. So they didn't mention that in the article.
Sorry, can I just speak to that?
Sorry.
So there's the vehicle, the kilometres VKT.
Yeah.
And you're right, Greater Wellington has recognised that when that policy hits and when that work lands, Waka Kotahi needs to invest with the regional council on how to beef up public transport by way of servicing suburbs to the trains and how to actually improve all that infrastructure. So again, that conversation has started in the region, and a recognition that the regional council has made to Waka Kotahi and land transport that they need to come with some dollars because that's huge. It's huge money and it needs to happen. So, yep, I heard Luke Troy saying that, he recognising that's an issue.
Yeah, and you're talking hundreds of millions of
Hundreds
dollars for new
of
rolling
millions.
stock as well.
Hundreds
That means
of
Greater
millions.
Wellington will pass that on to our ratepayer.
Yeah, exactly.
In their rate, not ours.
There is that.
I'll allow you.
Yeah, I can't. I hope that we don't come up like the Auckland councils, crazy figures like 17% increase in people using bikes in the next 8 years. I mean, these things are being driven by people who are very passionate, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but they're super passionate and they are unrealistic in the expectation of what the community can do or will do. And it's a huge expense, but at the end of the day, it's got to be realistically achievable, not driven by fanatics.
Points noted. You and I, we will come to that, but not in this forum particularly. Yeah, you won't be here. All right. Are there any other questions? Calm down, councillors. Calm down. Leave it up to me to get on. In summary, I just want two things. One is for the council going forward, whoever makes up that council, you can see coming through here increased costs. And this is something that we've already been advised of this by the Chief Executive going forward for next year and the Chief Financial Officer, that there are immense pressures coming on council. It's not only this council, but councils all around the country, but there are huge pressures that are going to be on us. I don't want to say anything more than that. The other thing I wanted to say was, because project management is really important, we don't manage any projects, we manage contractors and manage some projects. I've asked Lynn to prepare and through Joe to prepare just a little workshop for us on project management in PCC. I think it will be good for councillors going forward to understand when people ask us about projects and some of the comments that get made, like, you're useless or whatever. We are not, but I'd just like to have, on your behalf, asked that we have a little workshop on this so that we understand better these processes within council. All right. So I'll now put the motion that we accept the report. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. And that is the end of business. So we close the meeting at 9:24 and go